Mrs. Sticky became a millionaire, and less than 24 hours later, she had absolutely nothing left. No robbery, no hackers, no gambling. She spent $1 million in a single day, and the worst part, she actually believed she was making smart financial decisions. So I had to know, how does someone lose $1 million without buying anything useful? It all started yesterday. Mrs. Sticky was living her completely normal life when she received a message she never expected. Congratulations! You now have $1 million. At first, she thought it was fake. She refreshed her banking app once, twice, 3 times. The balance never changed. She was officially a millionaire. Most people would stop, take a deep breath, and make a plan. Mrs. Sticky did something very different. She stood up, looked at the number on her phone, and smiled. I'm rich. I never have to think again. That single sentence changed everything. Within minutes, she threw away her shopping list. She threw away her budget. She even threw away her calculator. Because according to Mrs. Sticky, millionaires don't need budgets. Millionaires don't compare prices. Millionaires don't wait for discounts. Millionaires simply buy whatever they want. The first store she walked into completely changed the rest of her day. Because waiting inside was the world's greatest salesman. Mrs. Sticky was exactly the customer he had been waiting for. The salesman didn't ask what Mrs. Sticky needed. He didn't ask what she was looking for. He didn't even ask what she liked. He looked at her bank balance and smiled. Congratulations! You've officially unlocked our VIP collection. Mrs. Sticky had no idea what that meant, but the word VIP sounded expensive. So obviously, she wanted it. The salesman walked her past hundreds of normal products, past shelves filled with things ordinary people could actually afford, straight into a private showroom. Everything inside looked fancy. Luxury watches, designer handbags, golden statues, a chair that somehow cost more than an actual car. Mrs. Sticky stared at the price tag. For a second, her old self came back. Wait, who would ever pay this much? The salesman leaned closer. Millionaires. Mrs. Sticky nodded immediately. Oh, that makes sense. 5 seconds later, the chair was hers. She didn't even sit on it. She just liked knowing she owned it. Then she bought a watch. Not because she needed one. She already had a phone. But because the salesman said, it tells people you've made it. Sold. Next came a designer bag. Mrs. Sticky didn't even know what brand it was. But everyone else inside the store looked impressed. So she bought that too. 1 purchase became 5. 5 became 10. 10 became... She completely stopped counting. Every time she reached the checkout, the salesman smiled wider. Excellent choice. You have incredible taste. Mrs. Sticky believed every single word. The more compliments she received, the more money she spent. By lunchtime, her house was completely filled with luxury boxes. She couldn't even open her front door properly anymore. The tiny dog looked at the mountain of shopping bags, then looked back at Mrs. Sticky, completely confused. Mrs. Sticky smiled proudly. See? I'm getting richer already. She honestly believed owning expensive things made her wealth grow. But she had forgotten one tiny detail. Every time her phone buzzed, her bank balance was getting smaller. She never looked. She didn't want to ruin the moment. Then, a black limousine stopped outside her house. The driver stepped out, opened the door, and handed Mrs. Sticky a small black invitation. No sender, no explanation. Only 4 words. Millionaires only tonight. Mrs. Sticky's eyes became enormous. Without thinking twice, she accepted the invitation. She had no idea. Walking into that party would become the most expensive decision of her entire life. Mrs. Sticky had never been invited to a millionaire party before. Successful business owners, people discussing billion-dollar ideas. Instead, the moment she walked inside, she heard someone shouting, "This investment will double your money by tomorrow." Another person claimed, "This luxury membership guarantees success." Someone else whispered, "Only rich people know about this opportunity." Mrs. Sticky's eyes lit up. Finally, she thought she'd found people exactly like her. Within minutes, strangers surrounded her. One complimented her watch. Another admired her designer bag. Someone even called her a natural millionaire. Nobody knew her. Nobody cared about her. They only cared about one thing, her money. But Mrs. Sticky couldn't see it. She thought she'd finally found real friends. One man walked over carrying a tiny black box. Inside was a simple black rock. No diamonds, no gold, just a rock. Mrs. Sticky looked confused. What does it do? The man smiled confidently. It represents exclusive value. She blinked. So, what is it? He smiled even wider. You wouldn't understand. Only millionaires buy these. Mrs. Sticky didn't want to look poor. So, she bought it for $50,000. The seller thanked her, then disappeared into the crowd. A few minutes later, another person offered her a bottle of premium mountain air. Apparently, it had been collected from the highest mountain in the world. Mrs. Sticky couldn't even see anything inside the bottle, but the label said, luxury edition. So naturally, she bought that too. Then came a gold-plated spoon, a celebrity coffee mug, a signed napkin, a brick from a historic building. Every purchase sounded ridiculous, but every seller used the same sentence. Rich people buy this. That was all Mrs. Sticky needed to hear. Hours passed. The party became louder. The shopping became crazier. Mrs. Sticky laughed, danced, and spent money faster than anyone could count. Then, her phone vibrated. For the first time all day, she looked at her bank balance. The smile disappeared. $1 million had become less than $100,000. Mrs. Sticky froze. She looked around the room. The people congratulating her were suddenly gone. The sellers had disappeared. The tables were empty. Even the music had stopped. She stood there, holding a very expensive rock, a bottle of air, and a spoon she didn't need. For the first time that day, she asked herself one simple question. What have I actually bought? Mrs. Sticky looked around the room one last time. Nobody was celebrating anymore. Nobody was smiling at her. Nobody even remembered her name. The moment her money disappeared, so did everyone else. She slowly picked up the expensive rock. Still, just a rock. She opened the bottle of premium mountain air. It smelled exactly like air. She stared at the luxury spoon. It worked exactly the same as every other spoon. For the first time all day, Mrs. Sticky realized something. She hadn't bought expensive things. She had bought expensive stories. Stories that convinced her she was becoming richer, when in reality, she was becoming poorer with every purchase. She rushed home, determined to fix everything. Maybe she could return it. Maybe someone would buy it back. Maybe it wasn't too late. She grabbed the first shopping bag and ran back to the luxury store. The manager looked at the receipt, then politely smiled. I'm sorry, all luxury sales are final. Mrs. Sticky felt her stomach drop. She tried another store. Same answer. Another one. Same answer. By sunset, she had visited every place she'd spent money. Nobody wanted the items back. Nobody wanted the rock. Nobody wanted the bottle of air. Nobody wanted the celebrity mug. The things that had looked priceless just a few hours earlier suddenly seemed almost worthless. She sat quietly on the sidewalk, surrounded by mountains of expensive junk. Her tiny dog walked over, dropped a simple tennis ball at her feet, and wagged its tail. Mrs. Sticky looked at the ball, then at the pile of luxury items. The ball had cost almost nothing, yet somehow, it brought more happiness than everything she'd bought that day. She couldn't help but laugh, not because anything was funny, but because she finally understood. Being rich was never about spending the most money. It was about making the smartest decisions. The next morning, the $1 million were gone. The fancy stores had forgotten her. The party guests had disappeared. The compliments had stopped. But Mrs. Sticky walked home with something far more valuable than the money she lost. A lesson, one that cost exactly $1 million. And somehow, she finally realized the easiest way to look rich is often the fastest way to become broke.